I was born into a family that I love and will always love. I have sweet memories of my beginnings. Fear, anxiety, darkness, pressing in, emptiness, death. By the time I was 7, my mother had me in beauty pageants. And talk about a backstage mom. I love her, but she really pressed me to be perfect. That went on for years until I was 14. Then it shifted to dance, and I had to be the top notch in that. My mother and dad came from a farming background and very, very poor. So when they got married, they really wanted to have everything they never had. But I had the pressure of being their hope. I was the way that they could say they were okay. I was the way out for them for feeling so bad and feeling so poverty-stricken. It was up to me. About the time I was 14, I got a call from my mom. She was supposed to pick me up from school for a doctor's appointment. And she sounded groggy. She said, "Honey, I'm not gonna be there today. I can't pick you up." And I said, "Mom, why?" And she said, "I can't, but I want you to know this. I love you." And she hung up. And something didn't feel right. Something didn't feel right in me. And I got to the end of school. I ran down the hill, because I ran down the hill home. And when I got home, my dad was carrying out my mom. And my sister-in-law was running ahead of him, opening doors, and my mom was limp as a rag. And I remember standing in the corner when I could see from a distance what was happening, and that was a life changer for me. Till the day that we were getting ready for church, and my mom and dad were having a fight, and their fights were never pretty. Their fights included knives that went into the chest. Oh, I'm sorry, that was forks in the chest, knives to the throat, strangling on the top of the stairs. They were always violent, and I would hide in my room. But on this particular day, they started screaming again, and I was hiding in my room, and my father came and he said, "Honey, we're going to church." I said, "Daddy, we can't," because I knew what was going to happen. I knew it was another situation where I was going to come home and my mom was going to be dead. The last thing she said to me was, I said, "Bye, Mom, I love you." And she said, "You will come back and there will be nobody to buy you pretty dresses anymore." At that point, I didn't care, but I heard the threat in her voice. After a long time away and begging my dad to go back, we finally went back, and my brother he beat us home after church. And well, needless to say, she had gotten into the car, closed the garage door, and started it. And she made sure she had a sweet little warm blanket on her. Anyway, she died that day. She finally accomplished her goal, and I couldn't keep her alive. I continued on. Before, when my mom was alive, she had pushed me into many professional ballet studios, and We had planned to go to one at the end, and I started dancing, but my mom wasn't there anymore, and I didn't know how to keep going. The way I processed was I had an eating disorder. At the point where a teenager or a preteen starts growing, about 12 to 14, you start growing and a girl's hunger starts to get a little bit more bigger. Her appetite gets larger, and mine was, but my mom wanted me to be a skinny waif, and I just wanted to eat. And my mother, eventually, after many diets that didn't work, they put locks and chains on the fridge and on the cabinets. I had quite a big eating disorder, and I got down to quite a small number as far as weight goes. My dad didn't know what to do with me, so a number of times I was in and out of the hospital myself. And eventually, I was very happy. I had a goal. I was going to this wonderful college that was going to put me on Broadway, and then I could accomplish my mother and father's goal. Then I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who to please. I didn't know where to turn. And I was, again, in and out of the hospital a few times. I met a kind of cute guy. He really wasn't my type. I kind of went for the athletic type, big football guys, hockey guys. But this guy was tall and thin, and when I first met him, he had this big coat on with big shoulder pads. He kept trying to ask me out, and I kept going, gotta wash my hair. But eventually, we had a quiet time together one day, and I was talking to him, and he was one of the first guys that I ever told about my struggle. And he looked at me and he said, "No big deal. I totally understand where you're coming from, but there is an answer." I said, "You have an answer?" Do you know how much money I've paid to try to find an answer? Nobody has an answer. They say I'm gonna have my eating disorder for the rest of my life. He said, "Oh no, no, don't let anyone ever put you in that kind of category." I had no idea what he was talking about. Eventually I went out with his mom and dad, and we were talking, and he was with me, of course, and they started telling me about the gospel. And I can remember being baptized when I was 8 in the Baptist church. And they said, believe, just believe in God, believe in Jesus. So an 8-year-old knows how to believe in Santa Claus, right? So I believed in Jesus. When I talked with this guy's mother and father, they explained to me a secret that I had never heard before. And as I listened, I was a critical listener. I was taking it in, but I wanted to really understand what they were talking about. And this man, his name is John, he says to me, "Do you know what happened to Jesus on the cross?" I said, "Yeah, he took our sicknesses with him on the cross." He said, "No, well, yes, but when he was crucified on that cross, he went there as a sacrifice for you. He didn't just take your sicknesses. He didn't just take your sins, but he took your depression. He took your eating disorder. He took your anxiety, your shame." And I had been sexually abused by a family member. I had so many sins in my past that I didn't want to ever think of again. And I had been contemplating what my mother had done. It seemed like the only way to stop the pain. When he went to the cross, you can picture yourself up there on the cross. Your sins, your sicknesses, your torment, everything anyone's ever done to you, up there on the cross. And I imagined myself up there in my past, forgotten. I felt such a sense of relief that I didn't have to struggle anymore. I didn't have to fight to try to survive. I could be at peace. From the tomb, you were also raised with him. You have a new life. You're no longer dead. You have a new life. The blood that flows through my veins at that point, I imagined, was not the inheritance of what my parents had to give me, because that was a lot of junk. It was the inheritance of his blood. His blood flowed through my veins. His life in me. Him walking in my feet. Him touching through my hands. Him seeing through my eyes. I was new. The old was passed away. I walked away from that meeting with a better understanding of what I had to hope for. And I walked in it and I read the word. God did something in me that day. Now, previous to this, there was a moment where my secret had gotten out and a lot of people knew I had bulimia. I was in fear. I didn't know what to do, and I ran. I heard a small voice inside that said, "Be still and know that I am God." It took my breath away. It wasn't just a word that came from deep inside, it was a touch on my arm. It was a hug. It was the Lord telling me that he had things in control. There were just a few things that had my husband now a little bit on the wavering side. He wasn't quite sure if it was the time. My family rejected me. My mother rejected me. And that kind of hit a really soft bruise in my heart. Lord, why can't you take away my eating disorder? This is the man I love, and I surrender to you. I've surrendered it all to you. And again, I felt that warm, soothing voice speak to me. And he said, "Have you?" "Oh yeah, I have." He said, "Have you?" I'm driving in my tiny little car. "Yeah, I have." "Have you?" "No, I haven't." And I hadn't. My eating disorder was the one last way I had to control the outcome. And I didn't want to be rejected like I had from my mother, my father, and all their relatives. I didn't want to be rejected anymore. I was a hot mess. And I was driving and crying and I said, "Lord, I surrender it to you." And immediately I wanted to take it back again, but I surrendered it. The Lord said, "Keep giving it to me." "Lord, I give it all to you. I do not want to be in control of my life any longer. If you want me to be 450 pounds, if you created me that way, that's what I want to be. If you created me to be 70 pounds, that's what I want to be. But I can't live without you." My symptom was overeating for comfort and then throwing it up because of guilt. There was also a little bit of rage that came with that throwing up, just getting rid of that rage. No one could break through. My symptoms were always there. I either was going on the heavy side or I was going too thin and I had to be hospitalized. And my brain was never thinking right. And The Lord gave me some beautiful dreams of my mother. And then he gave me some beautiful dreams of him. And the next morning I woke up. I went to work. I came home. And as I was going to bed, I realized I haven't used my symptom all day. That continued. And one of the most precious gifts that I ever could have been given was to give birth to my firstborn son. I tell you, girls, it's a precious gift. After that, I had 6 more. I have a total of 7. My life is full. I found fulfillment in my body, something that I struggled with. I found fulfillment in what God created it to be. Oh, those were happy days, and they still are. There might have been times where darkness tried to be a veil over me, and my symptom wanted to flare up again. But no, God is strong. His Spirit is alive and well and available, and it was available to me and is still. The greatest joy I've ever had is not being on Broadway, is not performing, but is living a normal life with my many kids.